and welcome to our January wrap-up. So if you missed our January mid-month wrap-up, make sure to check that out. I'll link it down in the description when we'll be talking about Tinsel by Shabelle Pounder, Game Changer by Neal Shusterman, The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, Mossbelly McPherson and the Goblin Army by Alex Gardner, Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and that's it. I thought it was another one. I thought it was 6. That was silly. But yes, if you'd like to see our thoughts on those books, please go and check that out. And now I'll give you some stats, and then I'll get into my thoughts on the books that we read in the second half of January, of which I think there were 7 of them. Oh, there were 6 and a DNF, which I'm also going to talk a little bit about for you. So yes, we're going to be discussing 7 books today. But before we do that, let us do our stats. If you've been around for any of our end of month wrap-ups before, you'll know that we normally put like a list here with the number of the star rating and how many we've done, but instead we're going to have a beautiful pie chart today, with thanks to Sean for creating that. So we will pop that up and you'll be able to see the breakdown. So in January we had 1 DNF, 1 2-star, 1 2.5 star, 4 3 stars, 1 3.5 star, and 4 4 stars. So it was a pretty average month overall. Had some on the lower spectrum, but we didn't have any 1 stars, we didn't have any 5 stars. So it wasn't any brilliant books or any awful books, but there were some that we did enjoy quite a lot. Proud of the fact that we managed to get 11 done, because that is a good amount of books in a month, especially because I couldn't read for a few days because I had some dental surgery, which is why if I sound a bit gammy today, or if it looks like this half of my face isn't quite moving properly, yeah, that's happening because it's still kind of numb. Well, not numb, it's still kind of a bit swollen. Yeah, it's a bit kind of not in the right place, so it makes my smile look a bit strange. So I do apologise if that was putting you off, but feel free to come back in a couple of weeks when I'm having yet more teeth out and it'll be happening again. So let's get on with it. The first book that we finished in the second half of January was, oh no, I can't. I also need to share the page count. So in January we were aiming to read 4,541 pages, and we managed to read 4,235, which was like 93%, which isn't awful considering, as I said, I couldn't read for a couple of days, but it didn't get us over the 100% mark. I didn't take punishment in our Hook a Duck TBR for the next month, for February, so I'll link that down below as well. I decided not to take a punishment pick because I thought, I'm getting teeth out. If I don't finish the TBR, it's not that big of a deal. But what I'll do if I don't get 100%, well, 107% of February's page count read, I'll take 2 punishments in March, so it'll be a bumper bonus month. I did obviously read some of the DNF book as well, and there are 2 books that I've been dipping in and out of, so I have read over the page counts, but like across a few books and not actually finishing them, so I'm not being too strict. But yeah, that's what we were aiming to read compared to what we actually read, so we were pretty close. I'm quite proud of that. And now we'll get on to talking about the books. So the first book that we finished in the second half of January was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Now this is a King Arthur retelling, which is like crossed with Black Girl Magic, and I absolutely loved it. I will be honest with you, I read it so quickly and absolutely flew through it and was so absorbed in the world that by the time I'm filming this video I've basically forgotten what happened, which isn't helpful. I think that's because it's got a very complex magic system. So you've got the Order of the Round Table, you've got Scions, you've got Knights, you've got people being called to do things, you've got oaths, you've got the Order, you've got lots of things going on. I'm just like flicking through and I'm like, yeah, there's another thing. And you've also got the fact that this is cut between, there are Bloodcraft and Rootcraft. So you've got the Bloodcraft, who are the Order of the Round Table, who are the main kind of secret society that this book is focused on, but you also have people who work with Rootcraft. This is like the magic that's been passed down the black families, and it kind of comes from the deep south, from the days of slavery. So it's very interesting to see the juxtaposition between those two, the way that the different magic systems work in this world, and the way that our main character Bree is kind of like the meeting point for them. I honestly love it. Bree's mother dies at the very beginning of the book, so it starts off with a very harrowing kind of expression of grief. She's very distressed, she's struggling to cope with the loss of her mother, and it's made all the worse by the fact that the last conversation that her and her mother had was one that was had in anger. They had a big argument the night before her mother died, and she just assumed like, oh, we'll fix it at some point, we'll clear it all up, not knowing that was going to be the last time that they ever spoke. So that is obviously quite a difficult read, and the way that Bree experiences the grief is that she feels like she's split into these two halves of like before Bree and after Bree, and that she's built like this wall in herself to keep herself safe and secure. And I think that's a very realistic portrayal of grief. I really liked the friendship between the two main characters, who are Bree and her best friend Alice. She goes to an early college acceptance course thing with her, which is what her and her mum argued about. But I hope that their friendship gets focused on more in the future, because we're getting a lot about the fact that they've been friends for their whole lives. They were friends when they were very young, but you don't really see that play out so much in the story itself. So I'm hoping that Alice will become a more pivotal character in the next installment. There's also like a semi kind of almost love triangle going on in here. So Bree has feelings for a guy called Nick, but there's also like this dark brooding character in the background called Sel, and she has so much in common with him, and they would work so well together, even though he's a bit dark and broody and she's like, what's wrong with you, why are you so dark and broody? But I'm hoping that their relationship is going to be explored more in the future, because I do have some feelings towards Sel. I think he's a brilliant character. He's got so many layers and so much depth, and he's going to be he's got a lot of potential in the next installment. So it's going to be interesting to see where Tracy Deonn takes this book. But yeah, if you're tired of King Arthur retellings, don't avoid this one because of that. Because where it is focused on a black girl, it does have a nice twist to the tale. And I think that it's brilliant to see a book like this being published, especially a book that's got like a black girl loud and proud on the front cover. And it's just the kind of book that, of course, deserves to be uplifted, but it's not just because of the representation. It is a brilliantly written story as well, and I highly recommend checking it out. We are actually going to be doing a giveaway for our copy of Legendborn, because I got a paperback copy in Illumicrate, but I'd already gotten a signed hardcover from Owlcrate, so I'm going to be giving away this paperback. So if you would like to enter that giveaway, please just subscribe to the channel, maybe give the video a like, and then leave a comment down below. Sean is coming to help show off our fancy hardcover, I think. But yes, here is our hardcover. Double copies. But yes, if you leave a comment down below telling me what book was your favourite read from January and why, and then if you check back in 2 weeks, so this will be going up on Thursday, so if you, no, that's January, this isn't helpful, my calendar is not working with me, that's March, oh no. So this is going up on the 4th of February. So if you check back on the 18th of February, that'll be when we're announcing who the winner is. We'll either announce it in a little like short video, or we'll also reply to a comment down below and let you know. I'll do it all through like random number generating. First time I've done a giveaway, so I apologise if there are any teething issues. But yes, if you would like to win a copy of Legendborn, then please just subscribe to our channel and then let us know down in the description what book is your favourite of the month, and then you'll also be able to read this brilliant retelling. And I'm looking forward to being able to share this with other people, because it only came out in either November or December, and I've seen so many people hyping it up, but I don't want that hype to die down, because I'm so excited for the sequel, and I think this series deserves a lot of love. But yes, I really enjoyed Legendborn, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book that I read in January was Love and Olives by Jenna Evans Welsh. That's one I ended up giving 3 stars. So Love and Olives is the 3rd book in like a series of companion novels. It starts with Love and Gelato, and then it's followed up by Love and Luck. And in this 3rd book, we're following a girl called Liv. She has grown estranged from her father because he left when she was a young girl, but she starts receiving postcards from him. She ignores them. She doesn't want anything to do with him. Like, he left, and she doesn't think that it's appropriate that he's trying to like come back into her life in such a frivolous way, like sending postcards through, until he randomly invites her to go to Greece to see him. And her mum's like, yeah, you don't have a choice, you're going to Greece to see your father. So Liv ends up having to cancel all of her summer plans with her boyfriend, and she has to fly to Santorini, where she reunites with her dad. And she discovers that the reason he has invited her to Greece is because he's been approached by National Geographic to film a documentary about finding the lost city of Atlantis. So Liv has some conflicting feelings about this, because she believes that her father left her to hunt for Atlantis. He had always been obsessed with the city. It had been kind of their shared thing when she was younger, And then one day he just upped and left, and she thought he'd gone to find Atlantis without her. So Liv has to decide whether she can put her conflicting feelings about Atlantis behind her to help her dad with the documentary, or whether to just kind of let him get on with it, really. My main problem with Love and Olives was that I was just getting so bored throughout it. Like, it meanders along at a very lazy pace. And that isn't a problem with most contemporaries, because a lot of the time you're reading contemporary when you're on the beach, or when you're on holiday, or when you don't really have much to do and the sun is nice and you just kind of want to lounge around all day reading. But I think I was so excited about this book because I absolutely loved Love and Luck. And I was so excited about this book that I read it in January when it was snowing, and that wasn't the right choice. Obviously, I couldn't have predicted that. If I could go back in time, I would probably still read it and still feel disappointed. But it's one of those ones that if you like a slow-paced contemporary that really ekes out the romantic aspects, then this is going to be one for you. The kind of relationship between Liv and Theo was one that I didn't really care for, because Liv has a boyfriend. She meets Theo when she gets to Greece, and she's interested in him, but obviously she doesn't do anything because she's got a boyfriend. But you can tell that obviously something's going to end up happening between them, because that's what Jenna Evans Welch does in all of these novels. It's about, like, the romance is like the pivotal point of the story. And I just wasn't really interested in their romance, and it was like the slowest slow burn I've ever read, apart from books that have literally gone across like a few books in a series. So yeah, it was slow, beautifully written, lovely setting, makes me want to visit Greece, which I've never really been interested in before. But it wasn't really the book for me. But if you're looking for a slower paced contemporary novel and you really like slow burn romances, then this is probably going to be the one for you. The next book that we read in January was Dead Until Dark by Charlaine Harris. This was our 2.5 star read for the month. So this is the first book in the Southern Vampire Mysteries series, which follows Sookie Stackhouse as she meets a vampire for the first time and then promptly falls in love with him. And yeah, I just wasn't impressed. I read the first page and I hated it, and I thought I was going to end up DNFing it. So she is described, I'm blonde and blue-eyed and 25, and my legs are strong and my bosom is substantial and I have a waspy waistline. That sentence by itself makes me want to throw this book across the room, and I was so close to DNFing it at the end of the first page. I thought I'd just read the first chapter, which is like 50 pages. And then I was interested in like the mystery aspect, because there's like a murder mystery going on in here as well, hence the Southern Vampire Mysteries series title. But yeah, I was interested, and then I was like, might as well read it. It's a very quick read, that is a plus. It's just over 300 pages, but I'll be honest, I just didn't really think it had much substance. So when you think of True Blood, or when I think of True Blood, I think of like so many sex scenes that you could literally call it porn. Sexy vampires like Eric, and Bill's not really my cup of tea, but like Eric. Yeah, I just didn't get any of that in this, really. Like, Eric's dark and brooding, but in a really stereotypical and interesting way. And the sex scenes are not sexy. Like, they are so bland that I don't understand how anybody can find this, like, erotic. I don't read a lot of smut or, like, adult sexy romance, because it's just not really to my taste. But, like, honestly, I was bored. I wasn't like, oh, my heart is racing. Oh, I feel my loins are aflutter. Like, no. There's this bit when they're, like, having sex in a graveyard, and she's like, oh, it feels like he's trying to get to the ground through me. That's not sexy. In what world is that how you want to feel? Like, ooh. Like, I feel like he's trying to get through me into the dirt. That's not what I want from my men. I'm really sorry. But yeah, so not the book for me. The mystery's interesting, and I was enjoying it more until about halfway through, when it kind of took a bit of a turn. I've done a more spoilery review of this on my blog, so I will link that down below, because I don't want to get too spoilery in case anybody else hasn't started this series. I'm, like, tempted to carry on with it because I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to, and the characters are interesting, and it's nice to be back in this world, because I did enjoy the TV show, I just don't really remember much about it. But it wasn't really all that, and I can't understand how a book this kind of meh inspired like a 13-book series. Like, fair play to Charlaine Harris. She's made the money from it, but like, yeah, not the one for me. Also, yes, we do already own the entire series because I picked them up very cheaply from charity shops because they have really cool covers and they're bright colours and I'm interested in vampires. So we've got all of them. Might as well read some of them before we unhaul them all. Got the little bat on it. The little bat on it's really cool. I used to think this was just a really weird shaped blood splatter and then I was like, oh, it's a bat. Oh, shit. Now it's time to talk about our DNF of the month, and that was We Are the Wildcats by Siobhan Vivian. This book has a brilliant quote in the first few chapters in which it's like, she dressed like a girl from a movie about girls. Is that supposed to be deep and meaningful? Because I don't get it. It's meant to be like an uplifting feminist power story, like, woo, we're a team, we are the Wildcats, we've got each other's backs, woohoo! But I could see what was going to happen, and I was like, oh, it's probably going to be that. And I looked on the reviews, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's exactly what I thought was going to happen, is what happens. That doesn't interest me. It's meant to be like a big spoilery plot twist at the end, but it doesn't interest me. They were like, considering they're supposed to be this really tight-knit girl power team, there was already like some big stuff going on that I wasn't a huge fan of. There's 6 viewpoints and they all sound like the same person. There's like a girl who is missing her brother's birthday, nephew's birthday. There's the girl who had the injury and is back on the team. There's a girl who has a secret boyfriend who she can't have because she's got to be focusing on the team. There's the girl who really wanted to get on the team and then gets on the team. And, like, their only real motivation is the team. Like, the girl who has the boyfriend isn't like, I want to keep this boyfriend. She's like, oh, I want to just dump him and be on the team. And then the girl who's missing her nephew's birthday isn't like, I really wish I could go to my nephew's birthday. She's like, but at least I'm on the team. And I don't care. I don't care about field hockey. I don't care about the team. I thought the writing was very boring. The far too many viewpoints. If you're going to do, like, a viewpoint where it's like, oh, this is a huge, like, 20-person team, so I need 6 viewpoints, just be really brave. Do 20 viewpoints. Do, like, 1 chapter from each viewpoint. Make them so individual that they stick in your mind, and tell the story as though it's, like, little vignettes from each girl's, like, throughout the day. Yeah, and it was meant to take place in 24 hours. And we were already like 6 hours into the story when I stopped reading it. I stopped reading at 20%. We were already 6 hours in and literally nothing had happened. They just like done the tryouts and then been told you're on the team. And then they're like, ooh, we're going to a party tonight. Ooh, yay, sleepover. Just get to the sleepover. I don't care. I don't care. So I DNF'd it and I won't be reading it. Ever. Even though it's got a beautiful cover. I really wanted to read it because the cover is gorgeous. But I've read some of Siobhan Vivian's other writing and I wasn't a huge fan. It was like the Burn for Burn trilogy that she did with Jenny Han, and I really liked Jenny Han's writing, but it was clunky. It's probably the best word to describe that one. So I don't know if I'm just not a fan of Siobhan Vivian. I own a few of her other books, so I will probably end up giving a couple of them a go, but I don't really think that she is the author for me. The next book that we read in January was Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. Now, I do have this one through NetGalley, but because we had the teeth surgery, we decided to borrow the audiobook from the library, and this is actually the first audiobook I've ever listened to from start to finish, so kudos to the narrator who has brilliant characterization of the characters and made it easy to stay engaged. As someone who, my brain just like trails off, even when I'm in the middle of reading, even when I'm in the middle of filming, my brain's off doing other things in the background, like planning what we're doing later and getting all disconnected. So the fact that I managed to stay in this world and in this story, it's props to the narrator. So definitely check out the audiobook if you are interested in this story. I'll be honest, it's a bit of kind of like an overwhelming one when you first start it off, because you've got 3 sisters who are fate, and you've got a guy called Chance, and he comes swinging in and he's like, oh, I'm going to steal this girl's map. So it's like the fates map out the lives before they start. It's like, I'm going to steal this girl's map and I want to give her another chance. I want her to change her life. And then you realise that the girl whose map he has stolen is one of Cinderella's ugly stepsisters. So you join them as they're in the process of like cutting off bits of their toes to try to fit into the glass slipper, which is nice and gory. It's definitely one way to start a story off. And then Ella, who is their stepsister, she comes out and she gets her prince and her happily ever after, but then you carry on the story afterwards and you see what happens next. And I loved that because we didn't have to relive Cinderella going to the ball or the fairy godmother changing her pumpkin and the mice and everything. It just jumped straight in and it's like, oh, there's a prince here. he found this shoe at this ball and we need to try to marry him because he's a prince. Like, come on. And I think that there's great discussions about not living up to your parents' expectations and trying to follow your own heart and not fitting into the mould that society has crafted for you, because this is set in a historic version of France, so it's very much like women shouldn't be interested in science, women shouldn't be interested in riding horses, women shouldn't be interested in being adventurers or explorers or captains or warfare. And it's these two sisters, Isabella and Octavia, and they are rebelling against that. And like, Tavia is really interested in science and Isabel is really interested in war and strategy and commanders from history and things like that. So it's very interesting aspects there. It's a very feminist retelling. My main issue with this one is that there's just too many chapters. So I think by the end of the book we're on like chapter 130. Some of them are literally like a page on the Kindle copy, because at times I was reading along on the Kindle copy while listening to the audiobook. Like, most of the audiobook chapters were less than 2 minutes. That, for me, is overkill on your chapters. I am not a writer, but most books that I read don't have that many chapters, and it threw me out of the story a lot. It was kind of like, you know when you're watching an episode of soap, and like in EastEnders they have like the duff duff moment, and you're like, oh, that's a really like cheap cliffhanger, because you can tell exactly what's going to happen, and then the scene carries on at the start of the next episode, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just finished that scene off. It very much felt like that with the chapter breaks, so it could have been a lot smoother if it hadn't been chopped up quite as dramatically. That was basically my biggest complaint. I really liked Isabel's character. I liked the way that she changed her life and the way that she changed her fate, and all of those descriptions where chance and fate were personified and were kind of battling against each other. It kind of reminded me of The Game of Love and Death, which I never actually finished. I read the beginning of it and I just didn't get on with the writing style. But that is when love and death are personified, and they have like these characters that they're like playing against each other. So it's like they're playing a game and they're controlling it all. It very much reminded me of that. So if you have read that book and you're a fan of it, this might be one for you. I did only give it 3 stars. I don't know if it was just because of the chapter breaks being a bit too over the top, but I did get thrown out of the story a lot and I did find it hard to connect. That might have been because it was my first audiobook, so it might be one that I reread in the future. But I am definitely interested in reading more of Jennifer Donnelly's writing, and I do also have Poisoned on my NetGalley, which came out last year and is a Snow White retelling. So if that does a similar thing where it like continues the story after Snow White, definitely going to be one that I'm going to enjoy. And I'm glad that I finally picked this one up. The next book that we read in January was Breathless by Jennifer Niven, and this was another 3-star. I just don't really have much to say about this one. Girl is getting ready to graduate, and then her dad walks into her room and is like, yeah, me and your mother are getting divorced. And she's like, why? And he's like, I promise there's no one else. And then she goes to this like remote island with her mother. She meets a boy, they fall in love. It's a very cliched summery romance, and that's basically it. Sean DNF'd it. Sean got to either 25 or 30% and he couldn't get any further because he was very bored. If you like John Green, you will love Jennifer Niven's writing, because it's very much teenage characters who don't speak like teenagers. The character, I've already forgotten her name. Oh my god, I've already forgotten her name. I literally finished this 2 days ago and I've already forgotten her name. That proves to you how much of an impact this book had. Captain. I know that the guy keeps calling her Captain. So basically she just speaks like a really old person, like wiser than her years. And it just doesn't feel realistic. Lots of purple prose in there, lots of like endless monologues about the meaning of virginity and societal expectations regarding virginity, and oh, I will choose when I'm not a virgin, and I won't fall in love with the first person I sleep with, and I don't care about having sex, and sex means nothing to me. And then of course it does. So then you've got all of these passages where it's like, sex means so much to me, why did nobody tell me how much it would mean, why did nobody tell me that it would be such a deep change in my soul? And it's like,
everyone was telling you that.
Everyone was telling you that if you just shut up and listened and got your head out your ass. Yeah, so that was annoying. I liked the romance between her and the guy, whose name I also can't remember. They saved turtles together. Surfer dude. He saved her life at one point. She's like swimming out to sea and he's like, I thought you were drowning. And she's like, nah, I wasn't drowning. He's like, there are sharks here. She's like, oh shit, should have remembered that. My cousin got killed by a shark on this very beach. He's like, yeah, alright. And then she goes, Claude, my name is Claude. And he goes, I don't care.
I forgot how dumb her name was.
Claude, yeah. But no, that's literally, it sums up my whole feeling about the book. My name is Claude. I don't care. Like, what a brilliant line between who are eventually going to become, like, the main love interests. That did give me a chuckle. But yeah, so basically they save turtles and then they fall in love and then they both know that it's only for the summer and then they both get really sad when it's ending. But he, like, refuses to give her his number because he's like, cell phones don't work on the island. But, like, you're about to leave the island, why wouldn't you just give her your number for the future? And he's like, no, this should just be for the summer, let's keep this special. It's like, what? Yeah, he does sound like a fuckboy. But yeah, I just think, I get where Jennifer Niven was coming from. I think if she had set this in the past when you didn't have cell phones or it was harder to keep in touch with people, then it would have made more sense. I think in such an over-connected world where we've got social media, where you've got everybody literally in your pocket all day, every day, it doesn't make any sense. That also might have worked better for Claude's personality if it had been set in the past. I think that, yeah, she definitely feels older than her years. She definitely feels like she should have been set before. Sean said that it sounds like a book that she, like, written in the past and that she's now publishing it. But in the acknowledgement, she literally says, like, this is quite similar to my childhood experience of when my parents got divorced. So I do wonder whether that's where the disconnect is coming in. This was my first Jennifer Niven book. It's not going to be my last because we do own far too many copies of All the Right Places to not pick any of them up because it's got a beautiful cover. So I will read her other books. I'm just not feeling as excited about that as I was. And yeah, 3 stars. Didn't have an impact on me either way. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It sounds like I hated it because I can't really think of anything that I liked about it off the top of my head because I can't remember the bloody love interest's name. Oh! That was it. I liked the fact that there's, like, female masturbation scenes. That's good. More female masturbation scenes. Normalise that in YA because that's a thing that happens that young girls do, and it's often not talked about in YA. Like, you'll find guys, especially like male authors, will allude to it with their male characters, but it's not often that you actually have, like, explicitly, like, focus on female orgasms, focus on female pleasure, focus on female masturbation. So those are good points. Yeah, that was probably basically the only reason I didn't give it a 2. But it's something that needs to be said, and it's something that young people will appreciate seeing represented, and it might help young people see themselves represented in these books. So that's a good thing. And the last book that we finished in January was All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is a 3.5 star read for us, and it is a book about set in Ireland, and there's a girl who finds some tarot cards when she is cleaning out the kind of junk room in their school as a punishment. And she starts doing tarot readings for people. She's finally found, like, a skill. She's always struggled in intellectual pursuits. She doesn't like the education system. She struggles to learn things. She doesn't really retain information. But when she gets these tarot cards, she finally feels like, oh wow, there's something I can do. I can remember all these cards straight away. I've got, like, a real instinct to it. And she ends up doing a tarot reading for her ex-best friend. And at the end of this tarot reading, she's like, I wish you would just disappear. And then she does. So that's not handy, is it? That's going to look a bit sus. So Maeve is like, hey, gonna have to try and get Lily back, ain't I? And she makes friends with this girl called Fiona who was helping her do the tarot readings, and she teams up with Lily's brother Ro, and they kind of work together to discover what's going on with these tarot cards, who the mysterious housekeeper card is. This is the card that kind of showed up in the reading, and Maeve thinks that that's the reason that Lily disappeared. And yeah, they kind of team up to get her back. This is a conflicting book because it's trying to do a lot all at once. So there's obviously discussions about witchcraft, there's discussions about being sensitive to magic, there's discussions about herbs, crystals, all the kind of magical aspects, and I loved that. I thought that was so well explored. I thought it was really interestingly done. There's also the fact that Ro comes out as non-binary. So Ro tells Maeve what their true name is, and she's kind of the only one that knows, and they're going through a lot of changes within themselves as they're coming to terms with their sexuality, as they're coming to terms with their gender identity. They're exploring their expression of that on the stage. That's a fascinating aspect, but I feel like because of all the witchcraft stuff, that gets kind of pushed to the background, and that would have been more interesting if that had had more of a focus. Fiona is from Puerto Rico, I want to no, Philippines. Fiona is Filipino, and so she has always experienced kind of racism in her life, people judging her based off of her skin colour. She is also a scholarship kid, so there's kind of like the classist impact there. So that would have been really interesting to have explored a bit more thoroughly. And there's also this kind of hate group called the Children of Brigid. They're meant to be kind of bringing the pure values of Ireland back to the surface, making it a real Catholic country again. So they are attacking gay people, they are attacking people of different gender identities in the name of kind of purifying Ireland. So there is a lot going on in this book. Maeve blames herself because she thinks that by activating these tarot cards and by activating the housekeeper cards, she is the reason that the Children of Brigid are getting so much support. She is the reason for all of this hatred in the country. So she's trying to figure out how to accept that she has these powers and the impact that she's having on the people around her. But it's just one of those things, it's hard to discuss and it's hard to rate because there's a lot going on and there's simultaneously nothing going on. So they're trying to get Lily back, but that takes the whole book for them to either get her back or not get her back. I'm not saying how it resolves, but it takes a long time to get there. And although I loved the explorations of these different aspects, they were kind of just at like a surface level, and so it felt a little bit shallow at times. The writing was beautiful. I loved Maeve's sense of humour. I thought her sarcasm was really funny. The interactions between her and Fiona Monroe were brilliant, and I think that their friendship is definitely going to be one that sticks in my head. All very memorable characters, and the way that they bounce off of each other is very realistic. But yeah, it's just one of those books that I wanted more from it, but I can't put my finger on what I wanted, which is handy, because I can't really criticise it because I don't know what I wanted from it. I'm wondering if there's going to be a sequel, because it is left very open-ended. There's also some aspects that are introduced right at the end of the book that if there isn't a sequel, I would mark it lower. I am giving it a 3.5, assuming that there's going to be a sequel and that there is more to come from this story, and that the aspects that are introduced very late in the story will end up having more context and being explored further and expanded upon. If this is like in a couple of years and this is still a standalone, I will be dropping it down because there's a lot of gumph at the end that is completely unnecessary if this is a standalone, which is why I'm just assuming that it's going to get continued. But yes, very well written. Glad I read it because it was very entertaining, but it just got a bit slow in the middle and it was a struggle to get through, which I wasn't expecting. Yeah, that's basically all I can say about this one. It's also been pushed back until July. I was halfway through reading it and then I discovered that it was no longer out in February, it was out in July. So one of those books that by the time I'm meant to review it, I'll probably have forgotten everything about it. So I'll get a review written sooner rather than later, and I'm really, really glad that I read it, but hopefully that means that there will be an announcement of whether there's going to be a sequel or not, because with a few more months it might be a case of like it becomes book one in a series before it's released. That might be another reason that it's been pushed back. I know there's like COVID constraints with it, but yeah, conflicting but enjoyable. And those were all the books that we read in January. So really, it's been a bit of a shoddy month. Lots of average books. Loved Legendborn. Definitely going to be a new favourite, especially once I've reread it and kind of got my head around the world a bit more. But lots of books that I'm already struggling to remember, even though it's been less than a week since I've finished some of them, which is a massive shame. So remember, if you'd like to enter our Legendborn giveaway, please subscribe to our channel and then leave a comment down below telling me what favourite book you read in January. On the other hand, if you have read any of these books and you'd like to share your thoughts on them, if you agree or disagree with my opinions, then please leave those comments down below as well, because I'd always like to have more discussions about these books. If you like this video, please like it, and yeah, we will see you on Saturday with our next Sean Saturday. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Posted a few extra this week because we had too much content. Yeah, see you soon. Bye! I know we don't actually need to because you can just like cut it, but like it's fine. I need to just quickly get my note up because I'm stupid and I didn't think to do it already.